Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I am Aaron, and this is the Inclusive Dad podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me in exploring ways we can create a more inclusive world together. You are important, you matter, and you can make a difference. Today, my guest is Samantha Foote. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't you just start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I am a mom to three kids who have ADHD and autism, among other things. And then I actually got diagnosed with ADHD a few years ago. No, like a year and a half ago. I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway, and then I am a board certified music therapist. I've been a music therapist for 14 years. I work mainly with kids with autism and ADHD. I work with adults too. And then I also have the podcast Every Brain is Different, where we celebrate neurodiversity and talk about parenting your ADHD and autistic kids.
Yeah. So, what made you want to get into the music therapy and stuff?
I loved music. I
Sure.
have played the piano since I was 4 years old. And so when it was time to go to college, I wanted to do something with music, but I wanted to do something functional with music. I didn't want to be a teacher. I didn't want to be a performer. And I love psychology. And so I randomly found music therapy.
Okay.
And looking back on it, the way that the website described it is not what music therapy is, but it got me into the field. And for that, I am grateful.
There you go. What did it describe it as?
It just mentioned Beethoven and Mozart and listening to classical music and all this stuff. And you can use classical music in music therapy, but music therapy is just using music, any type of music, to achieve non-musical goals. So we can work on communication, motor skills, cognitive skills, social emotional, just all those different things. And it more described it as you just sit there and you listen to music and you help people with that. But we do, like, we rewrite music, we write songs, we improvise, we dance, we,
Okay.
do lyric analysis where we just look at the lyrics and talk about them. But I think I've used classical music one time in 14 years.
Yeah.
So, but that's what everyone thinks it is, and it's not.
Interesting. So if you have a new kiddo show up that you're working with, is there like a certain song or type of music you start out with, or do you kind of get their input, or how does that work?
Yeah, their parents usually fill out
Okay.
well, their parents always fill out an intake form. And
Yep.
on that intake form it has how do you use music in your home? How does your child, like, interact with music, and then what kind of music do they like? And so I take that and then I tailor the session towards the kid, that
Okay.
whatever music they like.
Sure. That makes sense. What is your definition of inclusion?
I would say allowing people to be themselves while including them in what you're doing. So, for example, a lot of people, adults, think that if someone is not looking at you, paying attention, you know,
Right.
just making eye contact, all of that, that they're not paying attention to you.
Yep.
Well, they might have ADHD where their brain needs to be focused on something else to focus on you. And so they might be doing something like doodling,
Yep.
and they're really paying more attention to you than if they were looking at your eyes, like not doing anything else. And so I would just say let people be themselves while also including them in what you do.
Yeah. I love that. Who's your favorite music artist?
My favorite music artist. I love Bon Jovi so much, especially his first album. I don't know if it was his first album. It was a 1986 album. It came out when I was born.
Okay.
And whenever I need, like, pump up music, I listen to that album. So
There you go. Is that the one that's got "Living on a Prayer" on it, or not?
yeah, yeah,
Does it? Okay.
yeah. And then yeah, I grew up on Bon Jovi, Celine Dion, and 90s country music. That
There
was
you go.
my growing up music, and so I love all of it, but
Right.
Bon Jovi especially.
Yeah, I grew up. My dad listened to classic rock, so we'd listen to a lot of classic rock. But do you like going to concerts?
I love concerts. Concerts are my happy place. Any live music is amazing. And I wish I could go to more concerts. Maybe when my kids are older and I don't have to find a babysitter for them. But I would go to a concert by myself. People think I'm crazy, but if I really want to see someone, I've never actually done that, but I've thought about it. So
What concerts have you been to?
the last concert I went to was actually Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour, and I didn't even know that it was happening. And then I was on TikTok and I watched the concert on TikTok and I was like, I have to be there. And so I flew, like I live in Idaho, and I flew clear to Florida
Oh wow!
to see her because that's the only tickets that I could get.
Right.
But it was phenomenal. Like I have never seen such a well-produced concert before.
Yeah.
And so that was awesome. And then yeah, that was the last one that I went to.
Yeah, I haven't seen her in person. My partner has. She's seen her in person. We watched. Is the Eras tour the one they have in Disney?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we watched that. That's a good. She puts on a good show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My 5-year-old daughter is obsessed with her, and she watched the show. She watched the concert on Disney Plus,
Yeah.
and then she was so mad at me when I did not take her to the concert. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not taking you across the country, and then you're probably gonna fall asleep,
Right.
and you're 5 years old. Like, no.
Yeah. Yeah, we're taking my daughter to see Jelly Roll and Post Malone in May, so that's gonna be fun.
Oh, I'm so jealous. They're actually coming to Boise, and
Are they?
I
Okay.
wanted to go so bad, but there was just circumstances
Yeah.
that I can't go. So
Yeah, it's gonna be. We've seen Jelly Roll twice in concert, and we've seen Post Malone too. So it's gonna be fun seeing them both together. So,
yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, are you gonna scream the whole time? And she's like, probably.
That's awesome. I love it.
So it'll be fun. But yeah, it's at the big football stadium, so that's gonna be a lot of people. But
Yeah.
it should be
Yeah.
good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Have you always been included?
Have I always been included?
Yeah.
No.
No.
So when I always was that person in like high school where I would move among everyone, like I was friendly with everyone, but I didn't really feel like I fit in anywhere.
Sure.
And so and then I thought I would fit into a group, and then I would find out that they were doing things without me, and they're like, oh, well, we just, you live out in the country, so we didn't think to invite you. But then they were doing things with people who lived farther away. And so that really took a hit, like to me personally. A lot of people, with ADHD have rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And so after that, I was just like, nobody likes me. Nobody wants to hang out with me. And I took it way more personally than I probably should have. But yeah, that's just how I've always been. I've always been like, let's include everyone.
Right.
But then I don't fit into like a specific group, I feel like.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how's it been being a parent of kids with disabilities or differences in neurodiversity?
Yeah, it's been interesting. Like, when my oldest son was 2 months old, and that's when they started talking about him being neurodivergent because he wasn't smiling, he wasn't looking at people. And I'm like, wow, like that seems a little over the top for 2 months old.
Right.
But then we got him tested when he was 3 months old. Not 3 months old. Oh my gosh, that would be ridiculous. He was almost 3 years old. And by that time, we had found out like he had really strong aversions to sensory input. And so on his first birthday, I made him a cake. I made him like the smash cakes for 1-year-olds.
Yep.
And he touched the frosting with his hand, totally freaked out, kicked his leg out, and then he touched the frosting with his leg. And he was just sobbing and crying and screaming. And I had to give him a bath in the middle of his birthday party because he couldn't handle touching the frosting.
Sure.
He didn't like going outside. He didn't like any of that because he didn't like things being on him. And so we got him occupational therapy, and he's a lot better now. He still doesn't like being dirty. He doesn't like, touching all that stuff. But he's been in occupational therapy for a long time. And so he was working on, the sensory sensitivity stuff, and now he's working more on like self-regulation. And so we just have our kids in the therapies, I think, is the hardest part of having neurodivergent kids, because they need the therapies, but then you have to take them to them. And with
Right.
three kids, 3 different appointments, and then like my son, my middle son was in speech therapy for, I don't know, 7 years, because he had a tongue tie, and then we didn't
Sure.
know he had a tongue tie until he was like 3 years old. And so by the time we got it fixed, he was trying to talk,
Mhm.
but we couldn't understand anything he was saying because he had a tongue tie. And so once we got that fixed, it took a long time for him to figure out how to talk after that.
Right.
But yeah, it's been interesting. It's been fun. It is interesting, like the different needs that I have as a neurodivergent person compared to what my kids have. So
Sure.
working with that, I feel like we're complete opposites. And so I'm more sensory avoidant, where like my middle son is sensory seeking, and he's loud, and he needs to touch everything, and he needs to, like explore everything. I'm like, will you just stop? Because you're overwhelming me.
Right.
But yeah, so it's just been interesting, just figuring out what works for both of us so that we can both get what we need. And then my husband is also neurodivergent, and he cannot handle loud noises. And so having 3 kids under the age of 10
Right.
has been really difficult, because he just needs quiet, and he gets very overwhelmed when there's a lot of noise. And so we've just had to work with our kids, work with him. Like I got him loop earplugs,
Okay.
because he can put them in and he can still hear the kids, but it's not quite as overwhelming for him. So
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting about the therapy. So I have a daughter, Cecilia. She's 22. She has cerebral palsy and epilepsy. Uses a power chair and just all the different therapies that the doctors want her to go to, like PT, OT, vision, speech, all this stuff. And it's like there's just so many. I mean, between school and that, she could have been. I mean, all waking hours going to therapy. So just as a family, like, okay, what's like the most important thing now? I mean, she could go to all of them. How to prioritize? What's the biggest need, and focus on that, because there's just so much stuff that sometimes. And she was I mean, I have 2 kids. She was the only one that had to go to therapy, but I can't imagine having multiple people all need to go and juggling the schedule and everything.
Yeah. It's we've definitely had to prioritize, because people want, the professionals say, oh, you need to be in this therapy, you need to be in
Yep.
this therapy. And I understand it, because I talk to parents
Yep.
about that too, when kids are in music therapy, and then they're still in OT and physical
Yep.
therapy and speech therapy, and then they have music therapy too. Like most of the time, they just get music therapy for it to be a fun therapy for their
Sure.
kid, and just a
Right.
time to relax. And there's so many things that you can do with music just for overall health and overall well-being, that you don't have to target like motor skills or communication skills.
Okay.
That's what I do.
Sure.
But if parents just want a place for their kid to relax and have a positive experience with therapy,
Yeah.
then sometimes that's what we do. And the kid leads the whole session, and we just do what they need, because music itself can provide like immune benefits, like immune system benefits, releasing oxytocin, which is the feel-good hormone, releasing dopamine, all those different things. And so it just depends, what the kid needs. But kids need a chance just to be kids too. And by the time they go to all their therapies and school and everything, like it gets to be a lot. So we have to remember that they need time just to be alone and do kid things too.
Absolutely. Is music therapy, is that covered by insurance, or is that all private pay stuff?
It is covered in Idaho,
Okay.
and I think some other states, by a Medicaid program.
Oh, okay.
It's in Idaho, it's called the Family Direct program. So you have to get on the Katie Beckett waiver, which is a waiver that gives Medicaid benefits to kids based on need, not on income.
Sure.
And then once you're on that waiver, you get on the developmental disability waiver. And then within that, you get to choose. It's a very complicated process, and they make it complicated so people won't do it. Like I've had health and welfare people tell me that to my face. But once you're in the developmental disability waiver, you choose the traditional plan or the family direct or self-directed plan. And in the traditional plan, you just get, like your normal therapies, doctor's appointments, all of that paid for. But in the family direct plan, you can have non-traditional therapies like music therapy, neurofeedback, horse therapy, swim therapy, all those different things, while you also get all the benefits of the traditional plan. And so you do get a budget with it. Like on the traditional therapies, they don't give you a budget. It's all need-based. But on the non-traditional therapies, you get a budget and you have to stay within that budget. But I think it's really awesome that, they're at least paying for it. I mean, it's a crazy process to get approved, but once families are in it, then it's usually pretty smooth to get going.
Interesting. Well, it's good. There is a way to get, at least for some people, to get it paid for.
Yeah, but private insurance doesn't cover it. Like theoretically they do, but you would have to bill. It's really weird. You'd have to bill like an occupational therapy or speech therapy code, and that takes away from the amount of sessions that they get for those therapies. And so you don't really want to do that, because they only get so many of those therapies a year paid for. So we don't, but you can pay for it with like an HSA or FSA card.
Oh, sure.
So we can accept that, but insurance generally won't cover it.
Gotcha. Everything's so complicated.
I know. It's ridiculous.
Why can't we just give people what they need?
Yeah, exactly. Like navigating the Medicaid and insurance and like private insurance thing is so difficult. And I understand why a lot of families are like, forget it. We're not doing it. We're just going to live with what we have and not worry about it.
Yeah.
But
well, and sometimes you can go through, my daughter's on a Medicaid waiver in Minnesota. I mean, sometimes you go through all this stuff, get it to them, and they're like, hey, we never got it. And it's like, we spent all this time getting it to you. It's like, always make copies of stuff. Like,
yeah.
Don't send in your only copy.
Yeah, they actually lost my middle son's application when I first applied.
Sure.
I called them because it had been weeks and I hadn't heard anything. So I called them and they're like, oh yeah, this person has it. Oh yeah, this person has it. Oh yeah, this person has it. And I finally got to one person and she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. We never got that application. And I'm like, well, they said they did get it, but they didn't know where it was. And I said, it's electronically filed. What do you mean you don't know where it is?
Yeah.
So, and then people have had issues with applying to the Medicaid waiver and then getting denied for no real reason. And then they apply again and they get it. So I always tell people, if you don't get it the first time, just keep applying, because sometimes they just don't approve it because that's how they feel that day. It's really weird. I don't understand.
I mean, I've heard stories too, and I'm not sure how true it is. Like some programs, they just automatically deny people on the first try, and then if you try again, they approve you. Where it's like just that's the process to get some people just to stop, and then those that are persistent to kind of get it. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah, or they take a long time to approve it. Where if you call, I always tell families, when you apply, call once a week and ask where you're at in the process, because they will put it off and put it off and put it off, and you'll never get approved unless you call. And so that's what I always tell families that are applying.
Yeah. These little tricks you need to know, right?
Yeah. I'm like, and then families, at least in Idaho, to determine if it's actually needed, they have to do a Vineland assessment.
Okay.
And on the Vineland assessment, it's asking if your child can do things without any assistance. But parents will say, yeah, my kid can do that, when they have to help them, like they have to physically help them, or they verbally help them. They give them reminders. And I say, no, when you're filling that out, like pretend your child is in a room all by themselves and you ask them to do something. And if they can't do it all by themselves after you ask one time, then that means they can't do it.
Right.
But it's really hard for parents to say, oh, yeah, my kid can't do that. My kid can't do that. My kid can't do that. It's very demoralizing. And so they want to say, oh, yeah, my kid can do that, you know? And so I just always tell parents, like, just err on the side of my kid can't do that, because you're generally giving them more help than you think about in the moment. Yeah.
I've also heard, like, to think about it when you're filling out stuff, like, what does, like, the worst day look like, not the best day, because that can also make a difference. Like,
yeah, for sure.
If you have one really good day a week and they're doing all this stuff, but you have 6 where you're doing all this stuff or they can't do it, like, go with the 6 days, not the one day, because that's going to make a difference.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I tell parents too.
Yeah. So why'd you get started on a podcast or having your own podcast?
Yeah, I was diagnosed with OCD in probably 10 years ago. Okay. And I found a podcast about living with OCD, and it really helped me to understand that I wasn't alone and that other people were going through what I was going through. And so I wanted to start something like that for the neurodivergent community, where if you get a diagnosis, you can come and you can understand that other people are also going through it. That's what it started out as. And now it's more directed towards parents. So if your kid gets a diagnosis, you can come and learn like positive parenting strategies, understanding neurodivergence, and that kind of stuff. And so it's just to help parents not feel alone in their journey parenting their kid, because parenting a neurodivergent kid is very different than parenting a neurotypical kid. You know, like we talked about, you have all the therapies if your kid is in therapies, where you might be taking your kid to therapy, but a neurotypical kid is going to soccer practice. And I'm not saying neurodivergent kids can't go to like sports practices, but a lot of times they're doing other things rather than like the typical kid things. And so we just started that. And then to understand neurodivergence, like if you're not neurodivergent yourself and you're raising a neurodivergent kid, you might think that, you know, when they're having a meltdown due to sensory issues, that they're just having bad behavior and they can control what they're doing. Where if you understood that, hey, the lights were really bright, it was really loud out, you know, it was really loud where they were and they just couldn't handle it anymore, so that's why they had a meltdown, then you can maybe give them sunglasses or give them noise canceling headphones or something like that, you know? Yeah. And so that's why we started it. I have a co-host, Lauren, who helps me with it. And yeah, we just talk about that kind of stuff and celebrating neurodiversity, you know, like saying that these are the awesome things that can come from being neurodivergent, and this is what we should celebrate. It's not all doom and gloom all the time.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was looking at your website too. You look like you had a summit, and then you also have some other, like some parent coaching. Do you want to talk about those things a little bit?
Yeah, so I have a parenting community where it's for parents raising, you know, ADHD and autistic kids. Then they can come into the community. I have a course within it that focuses on positive parenting strategies, mastering your own self-regulation. So if your kid starts escalating, then you don't escalate with them, making things worse. And then understanding neurodivergence. So what are sensory differences? What are communication differences that are found in kids who are neurodivergent? And within that community, you can get support from other parents. We have group sessions, and then you can also ask me individual questions. I take like 24 hours to get back to people is what I say. And then, yeah, every March we have a summit where I invite panelists to come and speak, and we talk about all things neurodivergence, how you can help your kids, how you can help yourself. And then, yeah, the parent consulting is just, if you want individual parent consulting, I can do that, but I usually just have people join the community because I can do individual stuff within that too. So yeah, that's Every Brain is Different, and that's where people can find it, is everybrainisdifferent.com.
Gotcha. When do you sleep?
I don't know. Well, actually, I have been forced to sleep lately because somehow I got mono, and so I just fall asleep like at 7:30 at night. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to sleep now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Your body's like, you need to rest.
Yep. It's forcing me now, which It's been a couple months. I'm like, okay, we need to get
Oh,
over
wow.
this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. How do you think we can use empathy to be more inclusive?
just understanding that not everyone is like you
Right.
can help. Like I said before, like if you think that someone paying attention to you means eye contact, not doing anything else, not fidgeting, that's not always the case. And so you can, understand that somebody else is different from you and they do things differently, and that's okay.
Yeah. Do you think like some of that stuff though, like, I mean, I was born in 1977. I feel like, at least for when I was growing up, we were told you need to sit still if somebody's talking to you. You need to have eye contact. Do you think that's more of an older generation thing where people expect you to look at them in the face, or not really?
I think it's if you haven't been around a lot of neurodivergent people or you're not neurodivergent yourself, I still see younger people that are like,
Okay.
oh, they're so rude. They're not giving me eye
Okay.
contact. I'm like, well, because it physically pains them to give you
Right.
eye
Yeah. Yeah.
contact. So simmer
Sure.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because for me, when I was growing up, it was tied to like you're disrespecting somebody if you're not like focusing on them and giving them all of your attention and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And that attitude is still out there. I think we
Interesting.
just need to educate people more
Yeah.
about different neurotypes, and that,
Right.
if someone's not looking at you, they're probably paying more attention to you than if they were looking at you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I worked in a residential treatment facility for adolescents for a couple of years, and I mean, there was kids there that could sit in a room with 15 people all talking, and they could hear staff talking across the room and tell you everything they said. So, I mean, people do not have to be looking straight at you in the face to listen to what's going on and know what's happening. That's for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I was like, how did you know that? We were like 20 feet away across the room full of with kids yelling and screaming, and you still like heard what we said? How do you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. What is one tip you can share to help the listeners be more inclusive today? So just something simple we can do today to be more inclusive.
I would say help your kids be more inclusive. So, invite people to birthday parties, for
Sure.
example. If your kid knows someone at school and maybe they don't get invited a lot, like maybe invite them over, invite them to your birthday party. Because I don't know, it's always sad for me when everyone's like, oh my gosh, I wish we could just stop being invited to so many birthday parties. And I'm like, my kid gets invited to like one a year. So
Right.
maybe, I don't know. That's
Yeah.
just,
That's a
yeah.
good one. Is there anything you want to talk about we haven't discussed?
I think we're good. I would just say, when you're parenting a kid who's neurodivergent, think more about like ways to problem solve. Like if they're doing something that you don't like, or traditional parenting methods such as punishment and that are shown not to work long term. And so if you can help your kid problem solve and use positive parenting strategies, you'll get a better result than if, for example, my son threw something and a planter fell on the ground, a pot fell on the ground and it broke. And instead of punishing him, I said, okay, what are we going to do to clean it up? What are you going to do to replace the pot? And instead of like yelling and getting mad, we were able to problem solve. And so the next time something happens, he can be like, oh, well, this is what I can do to fix it, instead of just like go to your room and think about what you've done. They're not going to think about what they've done. And they're not going to think about it the next time something happens. They're not going to remember that, oh yeah, that was a consequence for doing that.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
Yeah.
Ready for the last question?
Yes.
Do you like Spam lunch meat? Yes or no?
No, actually, I don't know if I've ever eaten Spam.
You don't know if you've ever eaten it?
I don't think so. It just looks gross to me. I can't.
Yeah, I live in Austin, Minnesota, where they make Spam and where the Spam Museum is located. So I've just been asking everybody.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, I'm actually getting more people that haven't tried it. So I don't know if I'm going to have to start mailing out Spam to people that haven't tried it, so they can like give me a video saying what if they do like it or not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I should try it. It just looks gross to me, so I don't.
It's interesting because, I remember growing up, it seemed like there was a lot of the whatever is on it, like when you pull out, it looks disgusting. But now, like we had it recently, and there was way less of that stuff in there. So I don't know if they did change something, but there was not as much of that whatever they put around it in there. So
yeah, maybe I'll have to try it then, because that's what was gross to me.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. To those listening, thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey. It is truly an honor. Please join the podcast newsletter by clicking on the link in the episode description to keep up with the latest episodes. Together, we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.